You know what's
Now, we're going now.
Welcome to Fantasy Football at its finest, the WTF Fantasy Football. The F can stand for whatever you need it to stand for, depending on where you are in your life. Jim Day, Tony Cincotta, Jim Day and myself were doing this show about 8 years ago on Blog Talk Radio, and people couldn't see us, Jim. That might be a good thing.
I'm pretty sure it is. Hey, Tony, and welcome back. It's good to be on the air with you once again. People don't know you were actually the first one to give me a shot at co-hosting a podcast. So I'm glad to be back and working with you again.
You remember back in the day in Atlantic City? We were in Atlantic City. We were at a fantasy football convention. I had to do a show at 7 in the morning in the convention center. And so the night before, I said, Jim, you want to do the show with me? And you were like, really? I go, yeah, just meet me up here at 6:45. What are we talking about? Fantasy football. Don't worry about it. It'll be easy. And we did it. It was really good. And in fact, Scott Engel and Adam Ronis were after us, and the show was so much worse than ours.
Yeah, yes, it was. One thing about it is we always seem to have a good chemistry, so I'm looking forward to it. So why don't we just jump into some topics and get some talking going on?
Yeah, we got questions, and anybody wants to fire away any questions, you can use the group chat over here, and we'll answer questions throughout the show. So get yourself fired up and get yourself ready and raring to go. You know, one of the things that I'm looking at is that we've had a lot of people come out with some draft strategies, right? And people had the no running back theory. Some people no wide receivers. I got to ask the question, do you go into any drafts with any predetermined strategies when you go into the draft?
Oh, definitely not. There's no way in heck I do that. Every draft is different. Everything is definitely dynamic. You have to watch and pay attention to what the other people are drafting, what they're looking at all times. So, it's okay to go in with an idea of what you want to do, but you have to be ready to move off that idea at any time. And a lot of times that comes right in the first round. You find some value there that you didn't expect to be there. You have to take it. Don't feel bad about doing that. Always be ready to move off your plan if it's going to work out the way you want it to.
Yeah, I think you have to definitely be versatile. But I've done 4 or 5 drafts already, Jim, and I've picked at the end of the first round. So anywhere from 9 down to 12. And I've gone running back in all of those drafts. And I got to tell you, Leonard Fournette has been my target at the end of the first round. I like the Jacksonville offensive line this year. They went out and they improved it. Leonard Fournette, if he can stay healthy, I think it's going to be a big part of that Jaguars offense. We all know about the defense. And then in the second round, I'm getting a guy like Kareem Hunt as my second round pick. So I'm starting off running back, and I like that when we have such a shortage of running backs not in committees.
Yeah, no, absolutely. That's what you're trying to do. That the time of 0 RB is gone. People want to try and get those guys that are getting those touches. I mean, last year there were only 6 running backs that touched the ball over 300 times. And for fantasy purposes, you want to see more than them that do that. So, right now, trying to get a couple of guys that have a chance to do that is what you're looking for.
Right. And, the one other thing that I've noticed is we have more and more leagues out there with the super flex or 2 quarterback leagues. And I actually enjoyed the 2 quarterback leagues in a lot of moments. But when we went back 4 or 5 years ago, everybody would draft a quarterback in round 1. We don't see that anymore. I see people waiting on quarterbacks and ended up with 2 pretty good quarterbacks. How do you tackle any 2 quarterback leagues or a super flex league? For all the new people out there, super flex is you can use a quarterback also at that flex position.
Well, it depends on where the draft spot is. If you're at one of the ends of the draft, you have to be very careful in a super flex or 2 QB league not to get caught on the backside of a QB run, because having those 23 picks in between your 2 picks could really be a problem if all of a sudden quarterbacks start flying off the board. So, I tend to like to get one of the top 8 quarterbacks fairly early in those leagues, and then I feel content to just watch the rest of the league and have somebody on the back end that I like, that I think has value without having to rush through it. But I do want to get one of those top 8, and based on how the draft is flowing, you just have to be careful not to get caught.
You're listening to WTF Fantasy. What is the F for? You're going to have to figure it out. It might take you a whole show. I'm going to ask you about one particular quarterback because you said top 8, and I want to know if he's in your top 8. And that is the Indianapolis Colts, Andrew Luck. And the reason I'm asking about Andrew Luck is I watch all the highlights that everybody's showing and everybody's excited about him. He doesn't look to be throwing the ball too hard. And I'm a little concerned that maybe, they're 6 weeks away from the season, so they're right to take it easy. But I haven't seen him throw any pass with authority in any clip.
Actually, I have seen a couple of clips where I thought he had some tip to him. It's hard. Some of these clips are, from far angles, and for training camp, it's really hard to get a good one that's really dynamic and what you want to see. But, we're hearing all the right things about him. And right now, I've been leery, and I'll probably be leery right up until the start of the season until he gets some playing time. But I also am starting to buy in because he's out there. He's throwing the ball. People are, saying the right things. At this point, let's face it, if he does get back healthy and he plays a full season, you're looking at a top 5 quarterback that you can get late.
Top 5 quarterback you can get late. I'll tell you what, I got to ask you about a quarterback that's on the top 3, and that's the New England Patriots, Tom Brady. When you line up the pros and cons, right, there's more cons than ever with Tom Brady. We got the age, right? We got over 40 years of age. And second, if he's so good, who are the wide receivers we're drafting? I'm looking around at this Patriots offense, and Tom Brady's done a lot with nobody in the past. But this might be the biggest bunch of nobodies they've had in a long time.
Well, I wouldn't call them so much nobodies. It's just a matter of, really haven't done much lately. I do like Chris Hogan. He had a great start to the season last year. In 9 games, he put up decent numbers. You like to see those 5 touchdowns in those 9 games. 59 targets in that. Not such bad numbers. He was a top 10 wide receiver when he got hurt. So, I'd like to see him put a full season together. Brady obviously feels comfortable with him. So I'm not really minding him so much. Going at the 6.8 mark in a 12-team draft, to me, that's a little high just because he hasn't done it yet. But there's definitely the possibility, definitely the upside. Anytime you can find the number 1 receiver that's not named Gronkowski on the Patriots, you're good.
It's interesting with Gronkowski because this is the year that I believe that the fantasy experts are getting what they prescribe, and we're seeing tight ends slide down the board. I've seen Rob Gronkowski go in the 4th round of a draft. I've seen the first tight end get picked. I've seen the first tight end get picked in the 6th pick in the 3rd round in one draft I was in. The first tight end, which was Travis Kelce. How do you look at Rob Gronkowski, and when do you jump in?
You know what? I'm ready to jump in on Rob at the end of the 2nd round. And believe me, I have yet to see him fall to the 4th round. And, I've done, probably close to 89, 90 drafts already.
You know why? Because you play with people that listen to you, Jim. I'll tell you where it was. It was Fantrax people. If you go over and join their public leagues for money, you can get Rob Gronkowski in round 4.
Wow, I might have to go over there and start playing there for some money. I like that. I take that any day and twice on Sunday, no doubt about it. You know how much I love Rob Gronkowski. Always have, always will. Right from year 1, I've been a Gronkowski guy. And, outside of the injuries, we knew that was a risk coming in. When he came in, we were worried about his back. And people didn't think he'd last a couple of years with that back. But he's obviously done that. And you know what? If he can get a couple more years out of it, we may be looking at another Hall of Fame tight end.
He outlasted Aaron Hernandez.
Yeah, he sure did. He didn't outgun him, but he outlasted him.
Would you make him the first tight end that you drafted?
Absolutely. He's still my number 1 tight end, no doubt about it. I like Kelce. He does a lot of good things, but, Andy Reid, there's times when Andy Reid just forgets to use him. And that bothers me. Plus, you got a new quarterback in town. We don't know if they have any chemistry yet.
I'll tell you what, that quarterback situation in Kansas City is going to be very, very interesting. Not playing that well early, but it's early, so he's got 6 weeks to put it out. They got him some weapons there. I'm real interested, and I think that I'm not going to draft any of the top 3 tight ends in most drafts. I'll probably try to pick something out a little later. And How do you feel about laying off the top three tight ends?
I pretty much do. If I don't get Gronkowski where I want him, I pretty much I stay. I don't think I have. Well, I should say that I probably have Kelsey and Ertz in one or two leagues each, but really not. If I don't get Gronkowski, I'm waiting. There's a couple of guys I like much later that allow me to get much stronger, either running back or wide receiver early on.
Now, with the Patriots, we talked about Chris Hogan. What's your thoughts on a guy that if we go back to when we were first doing the shows, right? Everybody was talking about Cordarrelle Patterson. He's going to be the guy. And I was like, his biggest knock was he couldn't run a pass route. I don't know how good you're going to be in the National Football League when you can't run a pass route. The guy's always had athletic ability. Do all of a sudden the New England Patriots turn Cordarrelle Patterson into a football player?
Well, let's face it. If anybody's going to do it, it's going to be Belichick and Brady. I mean, they've done it before. We've seen them win Super Bowls with no names at wide receiver all around them. Let's face it. Any one of these guys, whoever we get into the season and Brady seems to favor, those guys are going to be putting up gold for whoever it is. So, he is a guy that has that big playability, even if he's only going to make, 5-6 good games a year. I like him as a very late round flyer in a best ball league. There's no doubt about it. I think he has that kind of upside. We've been hearing lately about all the circus catches he's making in practice. And again, that's all good and well and dandy. But yeah, it would be nice if he actually learned the plays.
Yeah, learning the plays is one of the things, and we had this a little later in the show, but we'll go into a smooth transition. Word from the Los Angeles Raiders, are they the Las Vegas Raiders, are they the Oakland Raiders? I have no idea, and I don't think anybody cares, but they're the talk of the town because a lot of people think John Gruden's in over his head and he's living 10 years ago. We'll find out soon, but their addition, Martavis Bryant of the Pittsburgh Steelers, seems to be able to have a tough time digesting the playbook, and maybe now we know why he was watching a lot of football in Pittsburgh the last couple of years.
Yeah, there's no doubt about it. I mean, he's basically they're saying he's a one-trick pony. He can't learn the playbook. They have to keep practicing with him in the same position and showing him what he has to do on every play, and that's not going to get him on the field. And especially with them also getting Jordy Nelson, who supposedly was done. He had nothing left except that everybody at camp, all the beat writers, all the coaches are just screaming about how good he looks again. You know what? I am all in on Jordy Nelson at this point because I've seen every clip from him from training camp, and the boy looks like he's ready to play.
I absolutely agree with you. And he's going so late in drafts, best ball drafts. I've got him on all my teams. I do have Martavis Bryant on one team. I forget how many rounds with the draft, but it was probably the 17th, 18th round. And I said, you know what? The best ball format suits a player like that. You don't know he's going to get on the field, but you know he has the capability to hit a home run 3 or 4 times. And so I think Martavis Bryant is still there for people in best ball formats. Very late, though.
No, I'm with you. Those kind of guys that run that 9 route that, we're looking for him to hit that home run ball. Those are the kind of guys you absolutely want in the best ball late. You want those guys that, they're not going to give you consistency. They're not going to give you 10, 11 points every game. But every once in a while, they're going to give you 22. And I'll take that 22 in the best ball when you have a deep bench as somebody who I want. There's a few guys along that line. Sean Jackson was always in that realm for me. Mike Wallace. These are the guys that you're going to get, 5, 6 really solid games out of. But in best ball, you can live with that.
You can live with that, and Jim's leading me down to another smooth transition. WTF, fantasy football. And, every once in a while, you might get to week 13, you say, F this fantasy football. I got no quarterback left, and I'm tired of these injuries. But you'll remember you were getting ready in August for this kind of heartache. You talk about the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Chris Godwin was announced that he was going to be a starter. This is a kid that in the last 2 weeks of the season looked good, has all the athletic talent in the world. Is this just training camp talk, or do I draft this guy? What do I do?
No, I like it. I've been watching. I've been listening. One of the things I've been doing for fantasy, Fighting Chance Fantasy is doing these training camp reports every day.
Unbelievable. You guys have to check this out. If you guys are watching on on YouTube right now. Check Jim's every day. Jim's putting fantasy notes out there. Jim, where can people find him?
FightingChanceFantasy.com. Just open it up, look at the football page, and basically you'll just see him lined up all the way down the page. Doing it started out as one article for the entire league. It got to be too much, so now it's broken up by NFC, AFC. Teams are in alphabetical order, and it's only fantasy football notes. It doesn't, I don't include the defense on them now. There's no kicker news in there. None of that crap. No offensive line unless somebody really important gets injured. It's just all your main players and what's going on with them. So it's a tough thing. It takes me all day to put all of that together. My beat writer list now on Twitter is over 380 beat writers. So trying to go through all those tweets every day is a lot of fun, but it's also given me a lot of insight into what's going on in camp, which I like. One of the reasons I follow so many beat writers is because if you follow just one, you're getting one guy's look. If you follow 10 for the same team, then you're definitely getting a better overview of what's going on. So I like it. This is looking good. I mean, he's looking good enough that they're pushing Deshaun Jackson into the slot to get him on the outside. They're saying Deshaun Jackson's having a good camp too. So it's not like he's having a bad camp. They like this kid. They like the fact that they think he's a better all-around wide receiver than Deshaun Jackson is at this point.
It's going to be really, really interesting. And now you can get a bargain, get him late. I think as we get closer to the season and he has a couple decent exhibition games, he's going to fly up draft boards. What about the quarterback situation in Tampa, though? How does that affect it? We got Fitzpatrick going to start the first 3 games, right? Then we assume Winston's going to take over. But if Fitzpatrick starts out good, I think they might stay with him. Dirk Cutler's job's on the line. How do you see it playing out with the quarterback situation? And Mike Evans falling down draft boards into the second round. Last year, we seemed to go to 7th, 8th off the board. How do you see this Tampa offense playing out?
Yeah, it's crazy to figure out. The thing I've always noticed about Fitzpatrick is he starts seasons off strong. First 3-4 games, he can usually knock the ball out of the park. One thing you're going to get out of him is he's not afraid to throw the ball. He's going to get out there and throw the ball, cut the ball all over the field. So you don't have to worry about that. Can he keep the job once Winston comes back? I think that really depends on how pissed off they really are at Winston about all this crap and, whether or not they even want to deal with it for the rest of the season. I think it ends up coming back to Winston. I do think he's the better quarterback of the two, but I also don't think we see Winston on that team next year.
I agree with both things. So I guess the question is Winston draftable in your eyes? I don't draft Jameis Winston because I don't like him as a quarterback. I think he's one of those guys that is in the Brett Favre style of football where you can throw a bunch of interceptions, you can have a low completion percentage, but volume, you make some big plays and everybody loves you. It don't work in today's NFL. Today's NFL is like a video game. You better complete near 70% of your passes. Like Brett Favre football would not work if he was starting as a rookie this year. And I think Winston falls into that category. What do you think about Winston as a fantasy quarterback?
I'm not buying it. He'll put up decent numbers when he comes back, especially if Mike Evans is really playing well. Having that kind of solid wide receiver one is always a good thing. And if, Godwin plays out on the other side and Deshaun Jackson in the slot, I mean, he's got a hell of a receiving corps. So I'm not going to say boo against him, but at the same time, there's quarterbacks that are going later than him, even with the suspension, that I trust more.
Yeah,
it's just as simple as that.
So I'm gonna own up to a Tony Cincotta draft method that I used this year, and I'm not sure if it was a good draft method. I actually, in a best ball format, drafted both tight ends in Tampa. What's your thoughts on Cameron Brate and Mr. OJ Howard there? And Howard kept falling. He kept falling, and I had Cameron Brate, and I said, you know what? I'll take them both.
It's in the best ball?
Yes.
Yeah, okay, I can't fault that in the best ball. I think they're both going to have their games. Howard is really starting to come on in training camp, and they've always liked Brate. Brate does work well for them. I could see them running some 12 personnel with the one running back, 2 tight end quite often. So it's going to be hard for me in a in-season long management to try and figure out which one is going to do what on a given week. But in best ball, I like that strategy you're covering up. I think both of them score you some decent points.
Now, one of the things that we talk about is when we talk about all our drafts, there's certain players we like more than other people and other experts in the industry. And then certain people, of course, we don't like and we think that are overrated. When you get to the end of your drafts after week one and you start looking back at all your teams, what player do you think will be the most owned player on your fantasy football teams?
Well, I actually have quite a few. Like I said, I got quite a few leagues, so I have a few I have on a big percentage of teams. But, if I had to pick one, it's a guy I've been hyping all preseason, saying it whatever I can, whenever I can, and that's Ben Watson. I love the fact he's going back to New Orleans, where he had his best season ever in 2015. It brought him back for that reason. He's coming off a season where he finished 8th last year. Everybody's telling me, oh, he's 37. You know what? He was 36 last year. He finished 8th. Get over it. You know what? He's in great shape. He's playing well. Right now he's injured, not getting a lot of camp time, which is a little worrisome, but not enough to bother me because where he's coming off the board in the 17th round, it doesn't cost you a damn thing to take him. And I just think he's going to have a solid year and be a top 10 tight end.
I agree with you. I've been scared off a little bit by the injuries, but when I look at that roster, there's no one for him to take the job. So he's gonna, as long as he's ready week one, it's not gonna matter.
Hey, he's got Michael Humanauanui there, but I can't remember when Mike first came out. I tried so hard to learn how to say his name because I really thought he was going to be the next big thing. Okay.
If he was the next big thing, you would have learned how to say his name.
Yeah. Yeah, I thought I did, but I seem to think somebody had told me that it was not pronounced the way I say it, but I say it Humanauanui. I don't know.
I can't argue with you because I have no idea. The guy for me is a little bit of a risk, but I like where he's going in drafts, and I think the upside's huge. And, of course, that's the Philadelphia running back, Jay Ajayi. Last year we saw him go from Miami to Philadelphia. I think in the middle of the season that things were going well for them, and they didn't put in a game plan. Now we have a change in offensive coordinators. We've got a training camp under. The one thing Ajayi's got the knock on him is sometimes he doesn't have the greatest effort, right? He's a guy with the attributes. He's a guy with the skills. He's getting a little older. He's on a Super Bowl defending team. There's no more LeGarrette Blount to steal the end zone touches. I'm going with Jay Ajayi. I love drafting him as my third back. I'd be a little scared to draft him as my second back. He's falling late enough that you can get him as a third back. I love him as a third back.
Yeah, I'm with you. I agree. I mean, especially playing behind that offensive line. Let's face facts. I mean, you're probably looking at the best run-blocking offensive line in the game with Jason Peters in there, and he's should be on the field. So I expect the guy to really come on this year. We did see him come on at the end of the last season with Philly, and I think, like you say, with a full off season, I expect a lot from the guy this year, and I love grabbing him as my running back 3.
Staying with the Philadelphia backfield, I think Clement is going to be the guy that's going to be the most overrated this year because I think people forget about Darren Sproles. And I think Darren Sproles is going to come back, and I think he's going to play well in this offense, and especially after the year off with the injury. What's your thoughts on the rest of the Philadelphia backfield?
Well, they like Clement. There's no doubt about it. They like Clement. They're going to get the ball in his hands time. Let's face it, Sproles has always been that guy who just, every time it seems like every time he touches the ball, he makes something happen. So I can't say he's not going to get his touches too. But, with the injuries and stuff in the last couple of years, you have to be a little concerned with Sproles. I'd much rather take the chance on Clement because I do think they're going to carve a role out for him. Like I said, this coaching staff seems to really like him.
It's interesting when you look across the National Football League and you talk about the Philadelphia Eagles defending the Super Bowl. In that division, of course, we got the Washington Redskins with their change of quarterback, Alex Smith, coming over. And yet, you look at the wide receivers, and we have Jamison Crowder, who was catching balls last year. 2 years ago, had the optimal year. Last year was a little bit of a disappointment, but still the number one wide receiver, and nothing else developed there with the Redskin wide receivers. How do you see that offense, and is there anything fantasy worthy other than a running back out of the backfield catching all the passes.
Yeah, man, it's that's going to be a tough one to measure because I'm just not sure who we're looking at and when. Is that what you're kind of leading into? Is that what you're thinking as well?
I think Crowder could end up being a steal. I think there's an opportunity for him to catch 90-plus balls, right? If Alex Smith locks onto a wide receiver, I don't know about Josh Doxson, what his role is. He's been so up and down. We've been waiting for it to happen. I think
He's been injured and not on field too often in camp.
Yeah.
So.
And I think with Jamison Crowder coming out of the slot, I think we're forgetting about him a lot because basically I think a lot of people are writing off the Redskins' offense.
Well, I don't know. I wouldn't say they're writing him off. I mean, he's currently coming off the board, probably early in the 7th round in most drafts. And, that's not really that late for somebody. A lot of people expect a lot of numbers from him.
But if you can catch 90 balls and go in the 7th round, that's a nice play right there.
Yeah, no doubt about it. It's just whether he does. I mean, I agree with you. I like him with Alex Smith. I've always liked Alex Smith a little more than most. Just seemed like a guy who always seemed to step up and play big when he had to. So I like those kind of players. He may not have always been the greatest fantasy quarterback, but he has shown he can be, especially last year. He's got some players around him. I like Chris Thompson at running back to catch some balls. I do think Darius Geis is going to be a good running back for them on the early downs and touchdown runs. So, Crowder is going to be a guy who catches some balls. There's no doubt about it. Whether it be 90, that's going to be something that, is really going to be – he's going to have to click with Smith to hit that number.
Gruden likes to throw the ball, man. He likes to show people he's got a big playbook.
Well, he likes to show people he's got a big something.
Let me ask you a quick question about the Alex Smith, Kirk Cousins situation. Who do you think is the better quarterback out of the two, and who do you think is the better fantasy quarterback?
See, I love this question. The better quarterback out of the two to me is hands down Alex Smith. He just does so much more better than Kirk Cousins does. Except Kirk Cousins, well, up until now, has had to throw the ball a million times, and that makes him fantasy relevant much more than Alex Smith has been until 2017. So that really works in his favor, or it did in the past. Whether it will this year, that's a different story. Now you're talking about all of a sudden having Dalvin Cook back, which should give them a very strong running back group and a very strong defense. Really have to throw the ball as much as he did in Washington. And if he doesn't throw the ball as much, can he still be as productive and finish as high in fantasy? I don't think he can.
That's the hard thing because I agree with you, right? Yet the wide receiver, you got Thielen, Stephon Diggs, Kyle Ridley. They have so many weapons, but you're right. They don't have to throw the ball 40 times a game. They got a great defense. They got the running backs to hammer it. So I absolutely think the one thing about Kirk Cousins that's different than every quarterback in the National Football League, I never see NFL quarterbacks come up short on throws. If you look at Kirk Cousins, he bounces the ball to receivers sometimes when he misses. Most quarterbacks, when they miss, overthrow the wide receiver. And it's always shocked me how he's the only one coming up short.
Yeah, well, hey, at least I'd rather him come up short than for all those duck passes that Eli Manning throws.
You're not an Eli guy.
I'm not. Hey, as a Giants fan, I'm not an Eli guy. But this leads me into another transition about, guys I like late and I think present a lot of value, and that's Eli Manning this year. I think he's a great quarterback to grab because you can get him so late. And let's face it, I mean, break it down a little bit. You got, let's see, you got a number one running back in Saquon Barkley on the team. You got a number one wide receiver in Odell Beckham. You got a number one tight end in Evan Ingram. You got another good wide receiver in Sterling Shepard. Well, you know what? If all of these guys have to finish close to give you value at ADP, so does Eli.
Yeah.
Because they don't get there without Eli.
I've done two best balls where Eli's my third quarterback, and I absolutely love it having him as the third quarterback because of what you mentioned. Whether you like Eli or not, the offensive line has improved this year. They do have a running back that will catch the ball in the backfield and run tackle to tackle, setting up more scoring opportunities. I thought the Brandon Marshall signing last year was an absolute joke when it first happened because I thought they already had a young wide receiver that should be on the field and playing. And I like what they're doing from an offensive perspective. The defense last year was trash in the secondary. They'll improve a little bit, but they won't improve great. That I think the Giants are going to have to put up some points.
No, I'm with you. He's a guy. He was on my list of other players that are most owned on my teams just because of that. I mean, he's going to put up easily 4,000 yards this year. I think he gets back up to 25 touchdowns. And if he hits either one of those marks, then you're looking at a guy who's probably a top 12 quarterback again. And you don't have to take him until oh, Christ, he's coming off the board in most drafts at the end of the 18th round, if you even have an 18th round.
Let me ask you a question about Barkley. We got a rookie running back. We've seen a couple of rookie running backs the last couple of years be very successful, but he's a little different. We've had some bigger backs come in the league in Ezekiel Elliott and Leonard Fournette and have immediate success. Barkley's a guy that catches the ball out of the backfield. He's a guy that can run the ball tackle to tackle. He's probably, even those two guys are bigger than him, Barkley probably can bench press more than both those guys. Where do you draft this guy?
I draft him in top 5 every time. I think he's going to get a gazillion touches. Okay, maybe not a gazillion, but he's probably going to at least touch the ball 300 times this year, barring injury. But you say that for every single player on the field. Let's face facts. They knew what they were doing. They went out and got this guy with the number 2 pick, and they also thought they needed a quarterback. And there were a couple of really good quarterbacks that could have been taken at that point, but they went out and got this guy because they're going to put him on the field, and they're going to put him on the field often. So you know what? I want a running back that's going to touch the ball at least 300 times, and I don't see any way they stop him from doing that. The one thing I'm going to say about Barkley, I like almost everything he does, except for the fact that, one of the things that really hasn't been brought up a ton, a few people talk about it, but not a lot, is that he has a tendency to always try and go for the big score, the big run. He's got to learn to take the short runs when that's all that's available. He can't keep trying to, dance behind the line of scrimmage and wait for something to happen. Sometimes you just got to hit the line and go. If he learns that, and he learns that early, I think we're looking at a phenomenal year here.
Is that because there's no games against Northwestern in the National Football League?
Well, it's something like that, yeah. But, I don't think that matters. I think this kid is a real playmaker. I think they got themselves an excellent running back. Now, if this offensive line can actually come together and form a bond as a team, I think, the lights are out for this kid. I think he's going to be – next year, he's going to be in consideration for the number 1 spot in fantasy.
Oh, you're listening to WTF Fantasy Football. Jim Day, Tony Cincotta, breaking it down. Now, you talked about Saquon Barkley moving him up to 5, a guy that's been in the first round for the last couple of years, and it's not because he's excelled. It's because he gets a lot of work, and that's good in fantasy. That's San Diego Chargers running back Melvin Gordon. We keep looking at the 3.4 yards a carry, 3.5 yards a carry, and we keep saying, oh, he gets the ball. Keep picking him. How long does that last, Jim? How long can you be ineffective and still be a fantasy stalwart?
Hey, as long as they keep giving him the ball as much as they do, and he catches close to 60 balls a year, he's always going to be there. I think he's one of the safer picks. I think, the problem with Gordon is you're drafting him at his ceiling, and we haven't seen the floor. But I also think the floors are far way off for him, and we may not see the floor yet for a couple of years.
Yeah, I'll tell you what, when you say it's the safest pick, I think, though, for a lot of people, it's a boring pick. And people look at the 3.4, and I think people take a shot on other players because some people just are not enamored with Melvin Gordon.
Oh, I'm sure that happens all the time. There's no doubt about it. And there's times I look away from Gordon. I've taken Alvin Cook over Gordon. And you know what? If you look at the numbers, it's a stupid pick. But I think Alvin Cook is another guy who's going to be a special running back. And, I probably wouldn't have got him with the next pick I had. So, I've done that. I've taken Alvin Cook as early as the 7th pick ahead of Gordon. But, there's every chance in that Gordon's going to come out the year ahead of Cook in fantasy points just because he's going to touch the ball more.
It's interesting when you talk about Cook. Last year's first year in the NFL, he gets injured. He had some shoulder problems back in college at Florida State. Latavius Murray's still there. Is he draftable? Is he an automatic handcuff, or can you draft him solo on his own?
I definitely think I'm not a handcuff guy. I normally do not consider handcuffs because even if somebody's a handcuff, usually they can't come on the field and do what the original did anyway. So you're still looking at a major detriment. And most times handcuffs have to be taken too early. You know what? That's not the case with Murray, which is to me unbelievable. Where he's still going so late. I have anytime I've taken Cook, I've taken Murray because Murray showed last year he can get on the field and do the job once Cook went down. He had a good second half of the season. He looked solid. So yeah, he's one of my very, very, very few people I even consider for handcuff. But if there's one handcuff in the league I want, it's Cook and Murray.
Well, let's go with the other guy that's not there now and talk about him because I think McKinnon was a guy that had all the physical skills, but wasn't a football player. And I think that's what they would put him back there, and I think he got better. And now I see him go in the second round. And Jim, I'd have a stomach ache if I picked him in the second round.
Yeah, the thing I like about McKinnon, I think, is that I believe he has a chance to catch 75 balls in this offense. And you know what? We've seen Duke Johnson do it last year. Yeah. If you catch that many balls as a running back, you'll be a top 10 running back. So that's where I like him. I think if they give him too much work, I think it's going to hurt him. I think Matt Breida is going to be the guy they're going to have to work in and will work in enough so that we're not looking at him, McKinnon, touching the ball 300 times. But if he catches 75 balls and he's touching the ball 210 times, then you're looking at a guy who could easily finish top 10.
Yeah, I'll tell you what. Yeah, I think that you could be right, and that's the best plan for them to catch the ball that many times. But I have a hard time picking him in round 2. But a lot of people are gambling, and a lot of people can go there. I mean, heck, we looked at the Detroit running back situation, right? And they had a guy catch 70 balls out of the backfield. People are counting on Christian McCaffrey to catch 70 balls out of the backfield. So we got a couple running backs now that are going early in drafts that people are hoping that are going to catch 70 balls.
Yeah, no, and it's not off the charts. I mean, we've seen it. I mean, there's no doubt about it. We've seen more and more running backs starting to catch the ball, more than receivers. And I definitely think McKinnon and McCaffrey have a chance to do that this year because I do think that, I think McKinnon is the third best receiver on that team. And I think that, with McCaffrey, he's probably the second best receiver on that team.
It's very interesting with Christian McCaffrey. Last year, I don't know if it was a disappointment for people on the way he played, how much he was used, or it's just exactly what they thought. We have a change in the offense. It seems Cam Newton struggled a little last year. What will he do this year? What do you do with Christian McCaffrey? Now, I do have him on a couple teams. I picked him very early in the third round in both drafts that I got him.
I've taken him in a few drafts too. Again, not only they're talking about him catching a lot of balls, they want him to run a ton too. And that one scares me a little bit. If they're looking at him as a 300 touch guy, I think we might be in trouble long term. But I think it would also be the dumbest thing in the world the team could do for the team when you have such a good young running back to try and run him into the ground. I think it's just stupid in this day and age. But there's a possibility they do that. And if he touches the ball anywhere near that many times, he's definitely going to be a top 10 running back for me.
I think, what's crazy with McCaffrey is that I think that, yeah, he's small. I mean, he looks really small up the field. And if he does run the ball from the line of scrimmage a ton, he's certainly put himself at risk. But if everything falls right for Christian McCaffrey, he could end up being a top 5 back at the end of the season.
Oh, he absolutely could be. And, we've seen other small backs have a lot of, production running the ball even up the middle. And, I look at a giant. I'm on Bradshaw. He's not a big guy, but, he had no problem running up the middle, running the outside, goal line back. He did all of that stuff, even as a small guy. We've seen lots of small guys. Maurice Jones-Drew, small guy. I mean, not stature-wise, but height-wise. Definitely a small guy, what you would consider small, but the rest of his body maybe not so much. So, yeah, we've seen that before, and he's gotten a lot of work in college, so it's not beyond the realm of possibility.
I'll tell you, the one guy that I like at the quarterback position is a guy that disappointed last year, and I think everybody in the offense disappointed last year. Julio Jones is causing some problems there with his contract situation. But I believe Matt Ryan in the second year under Steve Sarkisian. Sarkisian's interesting because Sarkisian, to me, has been a guy that was successful everywhere he went. We know about his problems off the field. It wasn't at the NFL level. But I think in the second season, with all the weapons in that offense, I think Matt Ryan is a guy that's going the 10th quarterback off the board in some leagues, sometimes later. And I'll tell you what, I'll take him on every team.
Yeah, he's another guy I like too. I agree with you, especially with Calvin Ridley, the rookie. I think, I think he definitely presents another great target for Ryan. So yeah, I expect Ryan to have a nice bounce back season. Julio Jones, there's no way he's going to just catch 3 touchdowns again. You know, I'm not saying he's going to ever get back to 9 or 10, but definitely 6. 1,400 yards, six touchdowns is good enough for me. I'll take that every day. He's got the weapons around him. I can't see Matt Ryan having another bad year. I really do think he pops back.
And it's
let me jump in there. And this is one of the things that makes me, one of the things we've always seen is that people always like the brand new shiny object instead of the older guys. And I love that because I always work that into my draft strategy. I'll take that shiny new car because I'm going to take that old junker that's been running for 40 years and never stalls out on me, And Matt Ryan falls into that category. But the shiny new product for me this year, and seems to be for a lot of people, is Jimmy Garoppolo.
Yes. I got three guys I want to ask you about. You ready?
Yeah, go ahead.
Give me the order you draft these guys. Jimmy Garoppolo, Matt Ryan, and Phillip Rivers.
I'm going Phillip Rivers, Matt Ryan, and Garoppolo anytime. And Garoppolo is actually quite a bit ways down.
Here's the thing that I don't get, right? People look at the San Francisco 49ers and what Jimmy Garoppolo did, and he came in, he won those games. But here's the bottom line, people. I don't think you're paying attention. 7 touchdown passes, 5 interceptions. That's what Jimmy Garoppolo did as quarterback of the San Francisco 49ers.
Yeah, it's crazy. I had a couple of I had some stats here from some other stuff I did. I'd see if I could find it. But just the amount of times the kicker had to kick a field goal when Jimmy Garoppolo came to the team, as opposed to what he did before, is amazing. He at least doubled it in the 5 games that he started over what he did in the previous 11 games. He had to kick the field goal. Now, let's face it, he's going to throw the ball. He's going to put up yardage. But for me, I think he's going to be one of those guys who's a better NFL quarterback than he is a fantasy quarterback. I don't know if he's going to put up enough touchdowns. I know they get Carson back this year, who they lost. He didn't get a chance to play with him last year. But Carson's not a touchdown guy. He's not going to give you a ton of touchdowns. Goodwin really came on last year. Let's see if he can continue that. And they got McKinnon. So they have some playmakers. I'm just worried about whether or not he's going to be able to hit 20 touchdowns. And I think, to me, that's his ceiling this year is 20 touchdowns.
Yeah, that's just not enough from a fantasy quarterback in today's National Football League when you're playing fantasy football. You talked about the wide receiver situation. Marquise Goodwin last year, of course, put together a run. But he's had the concussion situations throughout his career and prior to his career. So that's a new thing for fantasy football players, right? How do you evaluate drafting a player with a concussion history? 10 years ago, we didn't even talk about this. You just get out there and play. But now with the NFL, with all the protections in place, what do you draft a guy like Goodwin?
Well, I really wasn't into him coming into the season. I like Carson a lot. I really do. I think he's going to come back to being a target hog. But they are really talking up Goodwin in camp. They're saying he's the sharpest wide receiver on the field. Now, Carson, again, has been missing some time as he slowly comes back, so it's not a fair competition yet. But he does have a rapport with Garoppolo that Carson doesn't have yet. Trying to evaluate from concussions. Hey, you know what? I had plenty of concussions when I played. I'm amazed that I can still talk. I'm amazed that I can still talk. I'm amazed that I can still talk. Oh, wait. No, I'm sorry. I just have to get out of the loop.
At first, I thought we had an internet issue. I was like, what the hell's going on here? Jim, that was good acting. You long in life.
So yeah, so I try not to really take that into consideration. I can't, it could happen any play. You know, one of the stats I really love that people aren't talking about. In the last 2 years, of the 24 first round picks, 12 each year, of the 24 first round picks, 10 of the 24 have not even finished top 12 in their position. That's 42% of the top 24 picks in the last 2 years haven't even finished top 12 in their position. And, everybody says, oh, yeah, all the running backs get hurt. And you know what? It's an even mix between running backs and wide receivers. You get 5 running backs and 5 receivers over the last 2 years that have not finished top 12 in their position. So nobody's safe. Nobody's guaranteed anything. So if you go in worrying about concussions or injuries and stuff like that, to a point where it's really detrimental to your draft, it's going to hurt you.
It's interesting. We were talking about Andrew Luck a little earlier in the show. I'm a little concerned about Andrew Luck's weapons as well. You got T.Y. Hilton there. Of course, they bring in Eric Ebron to solve all the problems. Jack Doyle looked like a fine tight end there last year. Who's going to be the wide receiver on the other side? Will we catch balls out of the backfield? That Indianapolis offensive line has been poor ever since Andrew Luck's been there, and it looks poor again this year, or maybe I might say even poorer.
Yeah, that's definitely a concern. The offensive line is a concern, but with Luck back there, he's going to throw the ball 600 times, especially if they're having a hard time running the ball. They don't have a good stable of running backs at this point. The rookie 99s, they're looking for a lot of things from him, but that's a pass catching back. He's not really going to be a between the tackles back. Whether Jordan Wilkins or whoever runs, it's definitely a stable I'm kind of staying away from. I don't really like those guys. But I do think, Ebron, this is what kills me with Ebron. He's got such a bad rep right now. People are just, oh, he stinks. And, I could never draft Ebron. You know what? Ebron was number 13th tight end in PPR leagues last year in Detroit. They brought him to Indianapolis because they want to run a lot of 12 personnel, which means the two tight ends playing at the same time to try and create the mismatches because they don't feel they have a very strong number 2 wide receiver. Right now they're saying Ryan Grant is their number 2. We've heard the Ryan Grant story a few times now, and never really seems to pan out. Peter King, he's out there telling the world that Deion Payne's going to be the next coming of wide receiver in Indianapolis, and that may happen. There's no doubt about it. I like this kid. I think eventually he steps into that role. I just don't know if he's going to be that big hit guy this year. So I think both of these tight ends are draftable tight ends, and they're going to be. I think Ebron is going to surprise some people.
Yeah, you know what? It wouldn't shock me either. And I keep going and I keep drafting Ebron every year. And you're right. I mean, for whatever the reason is, probably because he's a first round pick, we always seem to bash that guy. Speaking about bashing, there can't be any, picky. We're going to be bullies here picking on these guys. The Cleveland Browns. Now, the Browns situation is everybody out there in the world is going to lose their money this year because I don't know anyone that's betting the under and the Cleveland Browns 5.5 wins. Everybody's excited about the Browns. Everybody loves the Browns. And I tell people, listen, Hugh Jackson went to work 32 times in the last 2 years. And he had one good day of work in 32 times. And he's still there. And you people all think they're going to go from 1 to 6 wins. I don't see it. It's crazy. But from a fantasy perspective, they got a load of running backs, and they all could be good. Who do you draft out of that group?
I know everybody's high. Again, shiny new Nick Chubb coming into town. And, there's a lot to like about Nick Chubb. But you know what? There's a lot more to like about Carlos Hyde. I think Carlos Hyde is a better back at this point in his career. Chubb being the rookie still has a lot to learn. Hyde is a good all-around running back. He can catch the ball. He can run up the middle, can do what he needs to do. And the biggest part of that is that they have nothing invested in him after this year. Run him into the ground. They don't care. Chubb is their guy going forward. Why run him, to death this year? I think Hyde gets a lot of work. And right now, Hyde is a guy I've been taking. Now, saying that, Duke Johnson is also another guy I've been taking.
That's what I'm going to ask. What's Duke's role?
Duke's role is going to be the same. He's going to catch a lot of passes. Hyde is going to catch passes. I think that's why, I agree with you. I think this is going to produce a good fantasy team. I'm not sure, like you, I am not a you guy. I don't think he's a very good quarterback at all. I'll put it this way. I thought Jeff Fisher was a better coach than he is.
Oh,
and that's saying something.
Yeah. Wow.
But you're right. I mean, you can't go through 2 years he's just gone through and come out the other side and still think you can coach in this league. I just don't see it. I don't care what players they had. To win one game in 2 years is just nuts.
All right, you led me down with the Jeff Fisher too, who another guy that I think is the most underrated in drafts this year. He's a Ram. He's not one of Jeff Fisher's guys, though. It's Robert Woods. Robert Woods is a guy that had some talent in the National Football League and then started out great last year, right? Then he got hurt, and I thought when he came back, oh, he'll go back to being the old Robert Woods. We won't hear him again. No, they kept throwing him the ball, kept throwing him the ball. So they bring in Cooks this year. They signed Cooks to a long-year deal. Last year we saw Sammy Watkins, a guy with some speed, get down the field and not catch the ball, but cause havoc for the defenses. I think people are forgetting about Woods. Everybody loves Cooper Kupp, and I keep drafting Woods in every draft.
Yeah, I'm with you. I've liked Woods since he came out. I just think he landed in a bad spot in Buffalo. They just never seem to have a quarterback that can get him the ball. I think that definitely, we saw that start to change last year before injury. I mean, he had 4 touchdowns in that 2-week span against the Giants and Texans, where he had 240 yards in those 2 games. So I like seeing that. He's a big play guy, and I think in this offense, I like him a lot. I think Brandon Cooks helps him a ton because Cooks, Watkins is a good receiver, but he's not Cooks. I think Cooks brings a lot more to the table than Watkins does, and defenses are going to have to respect Cooks more than they did Watson, and because of that, I think that works in Woods' favor.
Now, I drafted Jared Goff on one team, and I think Jared Goff's a pretty good quarterback, and I think he'll be a good quarterback this year. But we've talked about it throughout the show. I think he's going to be a better NFL quarterback than fantasy because we talk about last year, the one negative I had on Goff from a fantasy perspective, he just doesn't throw the ball enough. He's not going to throw the ball 40 times like these elite quarterbacks do. And that Rams defense should be better than they were last year. In fact, probably one of the top 5 defenses in the league. How do you think Jared Goff is a fantasy quarterback?
I actually like him. I mean, we saw this kid, former number 1 pick. Everybody was almost set to write him off as a bust and, throw him away. And all of a sudden we get a new coach in town. And, oh, look, Jared Goff can actually play this game. What a surprise. Last year, 3,800 yards. I don't have the numbers in front of me. Sorry, guys. I think 28 touchdowns, but only 7 interceptions. That's good football right there. That's absolutely good football. Those kind of numbers get you close to top 12, if not top 12. And if he improves even a little bit this year, let's face it, the kid is still only 23 years old. I think he's going to get better. I think we're looking at his first 4,000-yard season. I think he has a chance to eclipse 30 touchdowns this year. I like Goff a lot.
It was interesting when you look at it. His first year, you talked about it. He couldn't even say the plays in the huddle, and what a difference. Now, here's the problem I have with Goff. Right, I go back to last year, and this is why I say I like him as a quarterback. I like him a lot. I think he's great, and I just think from a fantasy perspective, this is going to be the problem. Game 1 last year, 29 passing attempts, 24. 28, 21, 22, 21, 26. That's 6 games right there of under 30 passing attempts. That's what I worry about with Jared Goff.
You know why I don't worry about that? Because opposite that, he had 9 games with multiple passing touchdowns. 9 games, at least 2.
Absolutely.
He had at least 2 weeks with 4. He had, 3 weeks with 3? He's going to put those points on the board. And like I said, he's only 23. I expect him to get better.
And that's one of the things that you're looking at with the Rams. And this year, the Rams are one of the favorites to be in the Super Bowl.
I like the Rams team this year. I think their defense is going to be solid, and I think this offense is going to put up points when it needs to. I would not be surprised to see them get into the Super Bowl.
It'll be interesting. Jeff Fisher's comments as they well, he'll be talking about that's the team I put together. I just didn't let me finish it out.
I am not a Jeff Fisher guy. I thought he should have been gone a long time ago. They took way too long getting rid of him. Same thing is happening with Drew Jackson. Sometimes you just got to cut bait and bring somebody new in. Luckily for me and my Giants, it didn't take all that long to figure it out with Ben McAdoo that he was a total wackadoo, and get rid of him. So hopefully Cleveland gets smart and gets rid of you next year.
Before we round it out, for all the people out there in the 2-quarterback leagues, I'm hearing this name a lot, and it's not coming out of my mouth, but sometimes you got to help the masses out there and steer them in the right direction because we live in a public that can't help themselves these days. What's your thoughts on people drafting Mitchell Trubisky in 2-quarterback leagues?
Hey, in a 2-quarterback league, I'll take that shot. I mean, normally you don't have to grab him as your second quarterback, and you grab him as your third, which means you're looking at a bye week, type of guy. And I'll take that chance. I think Matt Nagy's going to be one of the best offensive coaches in this league, and just the different things he brings to the field each and every week. I think that's going to help Trubisky a lot. Will he make mistakes? Will he have issues? Absolutely. I do think we see a few interceptions this year from him. A couple of pick sixes coming back on that. Absolutely. But I also think he's going to put up some decent numbers, at least 6-7 games a year, and in a 2-quarterback league, that's not bad.
Now there's 3 fantasy question marks on that team: Trey Burton at tight end, Allen Robinson coming over from the Jaguars, and does Tariq Cohen get consistent playing time? How do you feel about those 3 players on the Bears?
I love Allen Robinson. I loved him when he was in Jacksonville. I think if he can get healthy and stay healthy, this is a guy. I don't think he gets back to 1,400 yards, but I definitely think if he's healthy 16 games, we're looking at 1,100 yards. Good 7 touchdowns. I'll take that every day. Trey Burton is still a work in progress. He should get the opportunity. I think people are overvaluing him where he's being drafted right now, but he does have that upside in this offense, again, because I do think so highly of Matt Nagy. But for me, who was the third person we were talking about? Who?
Tariq Cohen.
Cohen, yeah. Again, Cohen is going to be a nice, third down back. He should catch some balls in this field. We've seen plenty of teams that have had 2 running backs work out well for them and use that system. And I don't see any reason why they can't pair. Jordan Howard is not a guy who's going to go out and catch you 40 balls. That's not what he does. So I definitely have some room there for Tariq Cohen.
I think Tariq Cohen is the perfect guy to have on your team in best ball leagues. I think that he'll get you double-digit fantasy points, 7-8 games at minimum. But the problem is there are going to be weeks when you get 3, and the next week you're going to not want to put him in your lineup, and he's going to burn you with 22. So he's the guy that you want in your best ball formats.
Yeah, actually, absolutely. And find myself playing a ton more best ball these days than I used to, just because I don't have the time to do in-season waivers for 80, 90 leagues this year like I used to. That just definitely was a little bit crazy. I do know that we had at least 1 or 2 questions from
our
Facebook group. Let's get into those real quick before we get out of here.
Yep. Question 1. I don't have it in front of me, but I remember it. Mark Ingram, right? Suspended from the New Orleans Saints. Where do we draft him? And then if we draft Mark Ingram, who can we get late in the draft that could help us out at running back while Ingram's going through the suspension?
Well, I do. I like Mark Ingram. What we saw out of them last year when they were both on the field is we saw, Ingram getting more touches than Kamara, but there were 9 weeks where it was almost even between the 2 of them. I think we see a lot of that coming back. Again, you're looking at Ingram as a guy that they have no interest in going forward after this year. I don't think he comes back. So why not run him when he gets back? And the one thing that scares me a little bit on Kamara is that he has so many metrics that were so high last year. 6.06 yards per carry. You're talking numbers that just really haven't been done before. I mean, there's only been a couple of recent times where, within the last 30 years, I think there's only been 2 other running backs that have hit that kind of number on average. I just don't know if he can do it again. Those type of numbers, those kind of metrics, when they're that high and so abnormal to what the average is, you have to think there's going to be some kind of regression to that. So hopefully his touches increase a little bit to make up for that regression to actually give the value of where he's being drafted right now. And I think Mark Ingram, when he comes back, is going to be a solid running back to still have. Now, if you're waiting on, if you drafted Mark Ingram and you want some guys that are a little later that you think could hold you up for those first 4 weeks, I mean, there's a few guys I like. I do like Lamar Miller in Houston as a guy I would take, especially with crap. Sorry, mind part. The running back that's hurt for them,
Deontay Foreman.
Yeah, sorry. I think even if he does come back, it's going to take him a couple of weeks to get into football shape. Hasn't worked out at all. So I think Lamar Miller is a great guy in those first 4 weeks. I think he's going to get a lot of touches. Outside of that, I would recommend any of these pass catching backs that we've been talking about that can be had later. Luke Johnson, Tariq Cohen. There's a few of those guys that I would want later that I think give you that edge that you can get there. C.J. Anderson is another one going over to Carolina. I know, Christian McCaffrey is all the talk, but they didn't bring C.J. Anderson in to do nothing. He's get his work as well.
I agree, and he's going to at least get the goal line carries there, even though, it's funny because Cam Newton, everybody, he takes it there in the goal line. It was 2 seasons ago that Jonathan Stewart had more goal line carries than any other running back in the NFL. So I think it's one of those facts that people get distorted. We also had a question from Nick Ficcarelli. I have the 3rd pick, PPR league. Would Kamara be the right pick, assuming Gurley and Bell are 1 and 2? I haven't seen Kamara go that early, but I have no problem doing that.
I do. I just do. I understand it. I know, again, we just talked about the metrics so high across the board. I just don't think he can replicate them again. I do see those numbers coming back down a little bit to earth, but I also see him getting a few more touches. Hopefully it makes up for that. But at number 3, if Billy and Bell are off the board, I just don't think I could pass on Ezekiel Elliott. Yeah. I don't like Ezekiel Elliott. I think he's a putz. Yeah, I think he's a putz, but he's going to touch the ball a ton. And if Dallas is smart at all, they're going to actually start using him in the passing game more than they have because the guy can catch. They just don't use him that way enough. I think if that happens, if he sees any kind of increase in targets as well as his normal amount of touches, you're looking at a guy who could easily be number 1 next year, easily, without a doubt.
If you guys are listening to the show, you can also go over to Fantasy Football Talk on Facebook. Fantasy Football Talk. Apply for admission into this fraternity, and you have to be worthy to be in this group. It's not for everybody. You have to be worthy. And right now we have a poll. Which of the 4 receivers do you take at the end of round 6? Emmanuel Sanders, Jamison Crowder, Pierre Garçon, or Devin Funchess? And it's very interesting because the first 2 votes were for Devin Funchess, and they still have 2 votes. That's it. And the leader is actually Emmanuel Sanders, and I'm surprised by that. Crowder is 2nd, Pierre Garçon 3rd, and Devin Funchess 4th.
Yeah, that surprises me too. Funchess is going to be 4th for me. I think with Olsen back, with CMC getting more touches, with them bringing in T.J. Anderson, with T.J. Moore there now, I just don't know if he's going to see the amount of targets he saw last year again, especially if Olsen stays healthy all year, which I think he will. Last year was an aberration. So I don't, everybody's saying, oh, well, he was talking about retiring. I don't care. He's there now. He put in training camp. He wants to play this year. He's going to go out there and, get 900 yards, and that's going to definitely take away from Funchess. For me, again, I like Garçon. I like Garçon a lot. I think he's going to be a target, or if I want to say it that way, in San Francisco. Again, I know everybody likes Goodwin. I think Goodwin makes a ton of plays, but I think Garçon is going to be your go-to guy whenever you need to get that go-to first down, and that's going to be a lot in that offense. So I like him a ton. But one of the things I try and preach to everybody, and we're going a little over the hour, but I don't care. We're talking some good football, so let's just keep it going for a few more minutes. One of the things I'm trying to preach to people is that if you play in more than a couple of leagues, the one thing you don't want to do is have the same guy everywhere. You just don't. If you went into your 4 or 5 leagues last year and you were just so in love with David Johnson, he kicked your butt.
Yeah.
It's simple as that. He kicked your leagues. I'm not saying you still can't win when that happens. We've seen that happen. Everybody's seen that happen. But the odds are not in your favor. So the one thing I'm trying to preach to everybody is diversification. Try and get a little bit of everything. Everyone. If I'm at the number 4 pick, everybody asks me, well, who are you going to take? I'll take any of the big 4 that falls to me, whether it be Ezekiel Elliott, Le'Veon Bell, David Johnson, or Gurley. Whoever falls there, I'm going to take. But I've taken all of them. I don't think you go wrong.
I totally agree with Jim. I've got in big fights in the past with my man Scott Engel over on the Fantasy Sports Network. And Scott doesn't know how to spell fantasy, as they forgot the A. And he doesn't know how to draft either. But I still like Scotty a lot. Scott is a guy that goes, hey, you go by your rankings and you pick them exactly. And if you end up 80 teams with Ezekiel Elliott and he gets hurt, oh, well, there's always next year. Well, there is no next year. We play every game. There's terrorists out there. We don't know if we'll be around next year. So what we got to do is this is how you put your rankings together. You hear experts talk about tiers. So basically we have, as Jim just put it, running backs. We have 4 guys right at the top. Then there's probably 3 after that. And you can pick any of those guys to diversify yourself there. And you agree, you can't be out of your fantasy football season with every team in week 2.
Yeah, right. Absolutely. So, again, I play in a lot more leagues than most people. Tony will always attest to that. He used to bust my chops about that every week.
What was the most? Like 160 something, right?
Yeah, 165 that one year.
Amazing.
It was kind of nuts. Yeah, it was kind of nuts.
Now,
we're getting close this year. We're definitely going to top 100 this year.
I thought you were going to cut back to like 90.
Yeah, well, there was definitely talk about that, but then all of a sudden I got bored. So, okay, no. You know me, I can't say no to a draft. I never could.
You guys are listening to WTF Fantasy. Jim Day. My name is Tony Cincotta. We'll be back next week, 9 p.m. Eastern. If you did not catch the show live, you can watch it on YouTube and places we don't even know. It's the first time we've done a show. We don't know where it's going to end up. So make sure you check it out. Leave some comments. Check it off that you liked it and share it with other people on your Facebook page as well. Jim, any final words?
No, I just want to thank whoever did come and watch the show with us. We appreciate it. I'm looking forward to keeping this going every Wednesday night at 9 o'clock. And, Tony and I will bring on some guests, certain weeks and get some other people involved in the conversation. And, we're just here to try and help you guys. So hopefully we do that.
One last news note for a lot of people. FanDuel has stopped with kickers for this coming season. Jim, a lot of people are happy about that.
Yeah, I'm not a big kicker fan. I'm also not a big daily fantasy guy, but that's just me. When daily fantasy came out, I got to say this. I thought for sure, it'd be no big deal. I've been playing season long for so long. I could handle DFS with no not outside knowledge at all because I knew what I needed to know. Yeah, no, that didn't work.
I'll tell you what, I think a lot of people out there, and we'll try to give you some education if you guys ask for it during the year, is that people always fall into the situation you do, and it's not because you're not up to knowledge football. Obviously, people can listen to the show there. It's the games you play. You're playing the wrong games, Jim. We got to teach people the right games to play.
Well, you're going to have to teach me, too, because I don't know. We start talking chalk and all this stuff. I'm like, what? I don't have a chalkboard. What do I need chalk for?
WTF Fantasy, Jim Day, Tony Cincotta. See you next week.
Bye, all.